The dust of the trail still clung to Olivia Reynolds' skirts as the stagecoach rattled away, leaving her standing alone with her single trunk in what appeared to be nothing more than a memory of a town. Fort Bridger, Wyoming Territory, 1876. The place that was supposed to be her new beginning was little more than a collection of weathered buildings with windows like hollow eyes staring back at her. The silence was deafening after the constant rumble of the coach that had carried her from Chicago through endless stretches of wild country. Olivia clutched the letter in her gloved hand, the paper now creased and soft from the countless times she had unfolded it during her journey west. The advertisement had promised a thriving community in need of a schoolteacher, a respectable position for a woman of 22 with no family and few prospects back east. What stood before her now made a mockery of those promises. "Hello," she called, her voice thin against the vast Wyoming sky. A tumbling piece of scrub brush rolled across what might have once been a main street, the only movement in an otherwise still tableau. "Is anyone here?" The wind lifted a strand of her auburn hair from beneath her bonnet, and she tucked it back with trembling fingers. The journey had taken every penny she possessed. There would be no returning east, not without working for months to save passage money. As despair began to rise in her chest, the sound of boots on wooden boards made her turn. A tall figure emerged from the shadows of what once might have been a general store. The man approached slowly, his stride purposeful but unhurried. He wore a dust-covered duster, and a worn Stetson sat low over his eyes. As he drew closer, Olivia could see he was perhaps 30, with a strong jaw darkened by several days' growth of beard and eyes the color of a summer storm. "You must be the schoolteacher," he said, his voice deep and rough with disuse. He stopped a respectful distance from her, removing his hat to reveal dark hair that curled slightly at the collar of his shirt. "I am Olivia Reynolds, yes," she squared her shoulders, determined not to show weakness. "Though it appears there's no school or students or town to speak of." A faint smile curved his lips. "Quinn Xavier, madam, and you're right about that." He gestured to the empty buildings. "Fort Bridger's seen better days. Gold dried up 3 years back. Folks moved on." "Then why was I summoned here? Why advertise for a teacher when there's no one to teach?" Frustration edged her voice as she waved the letter. "This says a thriving community awaited a teacher of good moral character and education." Quinn looked down at his boots for a moment, then met her eyes squarely. "That would be my doing, madam. Your doing. You wrote this." Incredulity made her voice rise. "Why would you bring me to a ghost town under false pretenses? Not entirely false." He shifted his weight, his expression earnest beneath his weathered features. "I aim to bring this town back. The railroad's planning a new line through here by year's end. The land's good, water's plentiful. People will come back if there's reason enough." "And I'm supposed to be that reason?" Olivia asked, her eyebrows rising in disbelief. "A town needs a school to attract families." He looked around at the empty buildings, then back at her with determination burning in his eyes. "I'll build a town around you, Miss Reynolds, if you're willing to stay." Olivia felt laughter bubble up, not of humor but of sheer disbelief. "Build a town around me." "Mr. Xavier, that's ambitious, I know," he cut in, "but not impossible." He gestured toward the largest building at the far end of the street. "That was the hotel. It's still sound. You could stay there while I fix up the schoolhouse." Olivia stared at him, trying to determine if he was mad or merely foolishly optimistic. "You expect me to live alone in an abandoned hotel in a ghost town with a strange man as my only companion? Sir, I may be desperate, but I am not without sense." Quinn cleared his throat. "My sister lives in the old parsonage just beyond the church. Martha would be glad for the company, and there's the Wilsons' old couple who never left about a mile out. 4 people don't make a town, Mr. Xavier." "No, madam, they don't, but it's a start." He picked up her trunk as if it weighed nothing. "Come meet Martha. If you still want to leave tomorrow, I'll take you to the next town over. It's 2 days' ride, but they might have work." Faced with few alternatives, Olivia reluctantly followed Quinn down the dusty street. The buildings they passed bore the ghosts of what they once were: a barber shop, a saloon, a milliner's, their painted signs faded but still legible. Despite herself, Olivia felt curiosity stir. What had happened here? And was it truly possible this determined man could breathe life back into these abandoned shells? The parsonage was a modest white clapboard structure with a small porch. Unlike the other buildings, this one showed signs of care. The porch swept clean, curtains visible through spotless windows, and a small garden plot to one side where green shoots pushed through the dark soil. Before Quinn could knock, the door opened to reveal a woman of perhaps 25, her dark hair twisted in a practical bun. She had Quinn's storm-gray eyes, though her face was rounder, softer. "You must be Miss Reynolds," she said, smiling warmly. "I'm Martha Xavier. Please come in. I've put on tea." The interior of the parsonage was simple but comfortable. A quilt in vibrant blues and reds draped over a well-worn settee, books lined wooden shelves, and the aroma of fresh bread filled the small front room. Olivia felt some of her tension ease in the face of Martha's hospitality. "My brother wrote that you're from Chicago," Martha said, as she poured tea into delicate cups that seemed at odds with their rustic surroundings. "That must be quite a change from this." "I'm originally from Boston," Olivia admitted, accepting the cup. "My parents passed when I was 16. I've been teaching at a girls' academy in Chicago for the past 5 years, but when the school closed." She trailed off, not wanting to recall the humiliation of seeking position after position, only to find them filled or offered at wages that wouldn't sustain her. "Well, we're glad you've come," Martha said, settling across from her, "even if our circumstances aren't quite what you expected." Quinn remained standing, hat in hand. "I should check on the schoolhouse, see what needs doing first." His eyes met Olivia's. "Unless you've already decided to leave," Olivia hesitated. Every practical consideration told her to seek passage to a real town, one with actual inhabitants. But something in Quinn's steady gaze made her pause. There was such conviction there, such certainty. "I'll stay the night," she conceded. "Beyond that, I make no promises." He nodded, seeming to accept this as reasonable. "That's fair. I'll be back for supper, Martha." With a nod to Olivia, he placed his hat back on his head and departed. When the door closed behind him, Martha sighed. "My brother has always been a man of vision, sometimes too much so." She offered Olivia a slice of bread spread with golden honey. "But I've never known him to fail once he set his mind to something." "How did Fort Bridger come to this?" Olivia asked, accepting the bread. "Your brother mentioned gold," Martha nodded. "Small strike about 10 miles north, enough to bring the prospectors and those hoping to profit from them." The town grew quickly, too quickly. When the gold played out, people left just as fast. Her expression softened. "Quinn bought up most of the buildings for next to nothing. He believes in this place." "But why?" Olivia couldn't keep the incredulity from her voice. Martha's smile was enigmatic. "Our father helped found this town. He died defending it during an outlaw raid 5 years ago. For Quinn, this isn't just about buildings or business. It's about honoring what our father believed in, that people could build something lasting here." The weight of the story settled around Olivia like a cloak. She understood devotion to family, to memory. Hadn't she kept her mother's locket and her father's pocket watch, despite offers to buy them during her leanest times? "I still don't see how one schoolteacher is meant to resurrect an entire town," she said after a moment. "Education represents hope for the future," Martha replied, refilling Olivia's teacup. "Quinn believes if we can offer that, along with the promise of the railroad, people will come." She leaned forward slightly. "He's been writing to families who left, telling them of his plans. Some have expressed interest in returning if there are proper amenities." The afternoon passed with Martha showing Olivia to a small but clean bedroom at the back of the parsonage. After the weeks of travel, the prospect of a real bed instead of a stagecoach seat or a lumpy inn mattress was appealing enough that Olivia found herself looking forward to nightfall. As the sun began to descend, painting the western sky in fiery hues, Olivia sat on the small porch, watching as Quinn returned. He stopped at the well in what had once been the town square, drawing water to wash the dust from his face and hands before approaching. There was something compelling about his methodical movements, the careful way he replaced the bucket, his respect for the resources around him. "Miss Reynolds," he greeted her as he climbed the steps. "I hope you found the parsonage comfortable." Very, she acknowledged. Your sister has been most welcoming, he nodded, seeming pleased. I've been working at the schoolhouse. Roof needs patching and there's a family of raccoons taken up residence, but the structure's sound. Despite herself, Olivia felt a flicker of curiosity. How many students attended before everyone left? 27 at its height, Quinn replied. From 6 years up to 16 or so. Previous teacher left when his wife took ill. They headed to Denver for a doctor. He paused. Never got word if she recovered. The simple statement reminded Olivia of the precariousness of life out here, far from the medical advancements of the East. She found herself studying Quinn more carefully. Despite his rough exterior, there was an intelligence in his eyes, an articulation in his speech that suggested education. You mentioned a railroad, she said, testing his claims. When do they break ground? Survey teams due through next month. Track laying crew by fall if all goes to plan. He leaned against the porch railing, his posture relaxed but his eyes intent. I've secured contracts to supply timber for the ties. That'll bring work, which brings workers. And these workers will bring families, just like that. Some will, he shrugged. Others will come when they hear there's opportunity, a blacksmith, a general storekeeper, those with vision. Like you, she said, not quite able to keep the skepticism from her voice. He surprised her by chuckling. I reckon I deserve that doubt, Miss Reynolds, but yes, like me. His expression grew more serious. I'm not asking you to share my vision yet. Just to give us a chance before you decide. Martha called them in to supper before Olivia could formulate a response. The meal was simple but flavorful, a rabbit stew with vegetables from Martha's garden and more of the fresh bread. As they ate, Quinn described his plans for the town in greater detail, the repairs needed for each building, which businesses he hoped to attract first, how the railroad would bring not just travelers but goods, mail, and news. Olivia found herself drawn into his vision despite her reservations. There was something infectious about his certainty, the way he spoke of the future as if it were already present. After supper, Martha brought out a hand-drawn map of the town. I thought you might like to see what we're working with, she explained, spreading it on the table. The layout was sensible, a main street with businesses, residential areas radiating outward, the school positioned centrally with space for a playground. Even the cemetery was marked, set on a gentle rise overlooking the town. Your father. Olivia asked softly, noting the X marked at one grave site. Quinn nodded, his expression solemn. And our mother, though she passed long before the town failed. Influenza when Martha was just 10. I'm sorry, Olivia said and meant it. Loss was something she understood intimately. It's why this matters, Martha said, her hand resting lightly on her brother's arm. This town holds our family history. When everyone left, it felt like they were abandoning not just buildings but memories. Olivia found herself unable to dismiss their sentiments. Hadn't she felt something similar when forced to sell her childhood home after her parents' passing? The sense that each brick and floorboard held echoes that would be lost forever. I'll look at the schoolhouse tomorrow, she found herself saying. I make no promises beyond that, but I'll look. The smile that transformed Quinn's face was worth the small concession. For the first time, she saw beyond the determined visionary to the man beneath one who carried hope like a precious flame, guarding it against the winds of doubt and practicality. I'd be honored to show you, he said simply. The next morning dawned clear and bright. After a breakfast of corn mush sweetened with the last of Martha's preserved blackberries, Quinn led Olivia through the town toward what had once been the schoolhouse. In the morning light, Fort Bridger seemed less desolate. Wildflowers pushed through cracks in the boardwalks, and birds called from nests tucked into the eaves of abandoned buildings. The schoolhouse sat on a small rise, a one-room structure with tall windows designed to catch the light. As Quinn had warned, the roof showed signs of damage, with a few shingles missing on the western slope. The steps leading to the front door had weathered badly, and weeds grew high around the foundation. It needs work, Quinn acknowledged as they approached, but the bones are good. He pushed open the door, which creaked in protest. Inside, dust motes danced in the shafts of sunlight streaming through the windows. The raccoon family had indeed left evidence of their residence, but beneath the debris, Olivia could see the potential. Rows of desks, some tipped over but mostly intact, a larger desk at the front for the teacher. A blackboard still mounted on the wall, ghost marks of writing visible beneath the layers of dust. Quinn moved to the windows, pushing one open to let in fresh air. "What do you think?" Olivia walked slowly through the room, trailing her fingers over a desk top. Despite everything, she felt a tug of professional interest. This was a real schoolroom, not unlike the one she'd attended as a child. "The desks would need to be repaired and cleaned," she said, surveying the room with a more critical eye. "The floor should be swept and scrubbed, new chalk and slates would be required, and books, of course." She looked up at the ceiling, "And that roof must be fixed before the first rain." Quinn's expression brightened at her assessment. "All things that can be done. I've salvaged books from some of the homes when folks left stored them in trunks to keep them dry, and I can start on the roof today." "Mr. Xavier," Olivia began, turning to face him fully. "I appreciate your enthusiasm, but I must be practical. Even if you repair this building perfectly, what good is a school without students? And what would I live on while waiting for these theoretical families to arrive?" He nodded, accepting her concerns. "Fair questions. As for living, I'd pay your wage myself until the town council can be reformed. Same as was advertised, $30 a month plus board." Olivia raised an eyebrow. "That's a significant expense with no immediate return." "An investment," he corrected. "As for students, there are 4 children at the Wilson farm, old enough for schooling but getting none. And the Millers, they've got 3 more, have written they'd return if their children could continue their education." 7 students, Olivia mused. "To start," Quinn agreed. "More will come." She walked to a window, looking out over the town and the rolling hills beyond. There was a beauty to this place she hadn't noticed in her initial disappointment, the way the morning light gilded the distant mountains, the clarity of the air, the vastness of the sky. "I cannot commit to staying permanently," she said at last, "but I will give you 1 month. If by then there are not at least 10 students enrolled and signs of the town reviving, I will move on." Relief and determination mingled in Quinn's expression. 1 month, he agreed, holding out his hand to seal the bargain. Olivia hesitated only briefly before taking it. His palm was warm and calloused against her smoother one, the grip firm but not overwhelming. "I'll hold you to your word about the roof," she added as they released hands. "And I'll need supplies: chalk, paper, ink. I'll ride to Green River tomorrow," he promised. "They've got a mercantile that should have what you need." As they walked back toward the parsonage, Olivia found herself studying the empty buildings with new eyes. Not as symbols of failure, but as vessels of potential. It was foolish, perhaps one man's dream against the harsh realities of the frontier, but there was something compelling in Quinn's certainty. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of activity. True to his word, Quinn began repairs on the schoolhouse immediately, starting with the roof and moving to the floor, which he sanded and sealed against the Wyoming dust. He rode to Green River and returned with chalk, paper, slates, and even a selection of reading primers and arithmetic texts. Olivia, for her part, threw herself into preparing the classroom. She cleaned each desk thoroughly, arranged them in neat rows, and created a small reading corner with some of the books Quinn had salvaged. Martha contributed curtains for the windows, sewn from flower sacking but brightened with red stitching that added a cheerful touch to the room. On the 3rd day, Quinn brought an elderly couple to meet her, the Wilsons, who lived on a small ranch outside town. Mr. Wilson was stooped with age but still spry, his wife tiny and bird-like with bright eyes that missed nothing. "We've grandchildren who need learning," Mrs. Wilson announced after introductions were made. "Their mother, our daughter, passed 2 winters ago. Their father does his best, but he's no teacher." "How many children?" Olivia asked, already mentally calculating how to organize classes with different age groups. 4, Mr. Wilson replied. "Ages 7 to 13, smart youngsters, especially the youngest. Reads anything she can get her hands on. I'll need to assess their current knowledge," Olivia said, slipping easily into her role as educator. "When can they come?" "We'll bring them Monday next," Mrs. Wilson promised, "and we'll spread word to the outlying homesteads. There's families scattered about who might send their young ones. Now there's a proper teacher." True to their word, The Wilsons arrived the following Monday with 4 children in tow, 2 boys and 2 girls, all with their grandfather's blue eyes and their grandmother's sharp features. They were scrubbed clean, their clothes patched but neat, and they regarded Olivia with a mixture of wariness and curiosity. "Children, this is Miss Reynolds," Mrs. Wilson introduced. "She's come all the way from Chicago to teach you." "Why would anyone come here from Chicago?" asked the eldest boy, Timothy, with the bluntness of youth. "Because every child deserves an education," Olivia replied smoothly, "even those living far from cities." The youngest girl, Emma, who couldn't be more than 7, stepped forward. "Do you have books?" "Pa says books hold all the world's knowledge." "I do have books," Olivia confirmed, charmed despite herself by the child's eagerness. "And maps to show you places far beyond Wyoming." "Like Chicago?" Timothy asked, his initial skepticism fading slightly. "Like Chicago," Olivia agreed. "And Boston, and New York, and even places across the ocean." By midday, Olivia had assessed the children's abilities and begun organizing lessons appropriate to their levels. Timothy and his brother Robert had basic reading skills but struggled with arithmetic. The older girl, Sarah, was adept at figures but needed work on her writing. Emma, as her grandmother had suggested, read remarkably well for her age but needed guidance in all other subjects. When Quinn stopped by at noon to check on their progress, he found Olivia engaged in teaching the children about geography, using a somewhat faded map of the United States to show the relationship between Wyoming Territory and the eastern states. "And this," she was saying, pointing to Chicago, "is where I lived before coming here." "Is it very grand?" Sarah asked, eyes wide. "It has many buildings and people," Olivia acknowledged, "but it lacks the mountains and sky you have here." Quinn leaned against the doorframe, watching the scene with evident satisfaction. Olivia caught his eye briefly and felt an unexpected flutter in her chest at his approving smile. The days fell into a pattern. Olivia would teach from morning until mid-afternoon, after which she would prepare lessons for the following day. Quinn continued his work on the town, moving from building to building, making essential repairs to keep the structures from deteriorating further. A week after school began, a freight wagon arrived in town, carrying lumber and supplies Quinn had ordered. With it came a letter from the Miller family, confirming they would return to Fort Bridger by the end of the month, bringing their 3 school-aged children. "That makes 7 students," Quinn pointed out that evening as they sat on the parsonage porch after supper. "And word is spreading. The Hamiltons are considering moving back from Laramie." "The general store owners?" Martha asked, her mending forgotten in her lap. Quinn nodded. "Frank says his wife never took to city living, misses the quiet here." "A general store would be a welcome addition," Olivia admitted. "The trip to Green River for supplies was long and arduous." "It's a start," Quinn said, his gaze fixed on the darkening town. "This place has good water, good grazing land. The railroad will make shipping livestock easier. There's no reason it can't thrive again." Olivia found herself believing him more with each passing day. It wasn't just his words, but his actions, the methodical way he approached the rebuilding, the respect he showed for what had been and what could be again. As her month's trial period neared its end, Olivia realized she was no longer counting the days until she might leave. Instead, she found herself making longer-term plans for her students, considering how to accommodate the different age groups as more children arrived. The Miller family returned as promised, bringing not just their 3 children, but news that 2 more families were considering a return. The Hamiltons sent word they would arrive with the next supply wagon, ready to reopen the general store if Quinn could have the building repaired in time. On the last day of her promised month, Quinn invited Olivia to walk with him after school. They headed not toward the town, but up the gentle slope beyond it, following a path that wound through scrubby pines and flowering bushes. "I wanted to show you something," he explained as they climbed. At the top of the rise, he stopped. Below them spread Fort Bridger in its entirety, the schoolhouse with its newly repaired roof, the parsonage with Martha's garden now showing robust growth, the hotel being prepared for the Millers' temporary residence, and the general store where Quinn had spent the past week replacing broken windows and fixing shelving. It doesn't look like much yet, he acknowledged. But watch. As the setting sun painted the western sky in orange and gold, its light caught the windows of the town's buildings. Each pane of glass reflected the light, creating the illusion of dozens of flickering lamps. In that moment, Fort Bridger seemed not abandoned but merely waiting, poised on the edge of revival. "I see it now," Olivia said softly. "What you've been seeing all along." Quinn turned to her, his expression more vulnerable than she'd yet witnessed. "Your month is up tomorrow. Will you stay?" Olivia looked out over the nascent town, then back to the man beside her. In the golden light, she saw not just determination but hope and something else, something that made her pulse quicken. "Yes," she said simply. "I'll stay." The smile that transformed his face made her breath catch. Without thinking, she reached out and touched his hand where it rested on a fence post. His fingers turned, catching hers, warm and strong. "Thank you for believing," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "It means more than I can say." They stood in companionable silence as the sun slipped behind the mountains, neither moving to break the connection between them. The arrival of the Hamiltons marked a turning point for Fort Bridger. With the general store reopened, other families began returning, first a blacksmith and his wife, then a carpenter with skills needed for more extensive repairs, followed by a young doctor seeking to establish a practice where competition wasn't as fierce as in the larger towns. By early fall, Fort Bridger boasted 20 residents, with promises of more to come when the railroad survey team confirmed the route. Olivia's student count had risen to 12, necessitating a more structured approach to teaching the various age groups. Quinn, true to his word, had reformed the town council once enough residents returned. Olivia's salary was now officially the town's responsibility, though Quinn remained the largest contributor to the school fund. As summer faded into autumn, Olivia found herself more deeply invested in both the town and its founder than she had expected. Quinn's dedication proved infectious, and she caught herself making suggestions for improvements: a town library that could share space with the school, community gatherings to foster connections among the returning families, plans for a harvest festival to celebrate their progress. For his part, Quinn sought her company with increasing regularity. He would stop by the schoolhouse after classes ended, ostensibly to check on the building but inevitably staying to discuss the day's events. Sometimes he brought small gifts: wildflowers gathered from the hillside, a particularly beautiful stone polished by the creek, once a ribbon for her hair purchased on a supply run to Green River. Martha watched their growing attachment with poorly concealed satisfaction. "My brother was always the serious one," she confided to Olivia one evening as they prepared supper. "Even as a boy, he carried the weight of responsibility heavily. It does my heart good to see him smile more." "He has much to smile about," Olivia deflected, though she couldn't deny the warmth that spread through her at Martha's implication. "The town is coming back to life." "It's not just the town bringing that light to his eyes," Martha said pointedly, but let the subject drop when Olivia busied herself with the stew pot. In late September, the railroad survey team arrived as Quinn had predicted. Their presence brought an air of legitimacy to the revival efforts, and their confirmation that the tracks would indeed pass within a half-mile of town sent a wave of excitement through the small community. "We'll need to build a proper station," Quinn told the hastily assembled town council the evening after the surveyors departed. "Nothing fancy, but substantial enough to handle passengers and freight." "What about a boarding house?" suggested Frank Hamilton, who had taken on the role of council secretary. "Once construction starts, there'll be workers needing lodging." "The hotel can handle some, but you're right," Quinn agreed. "Mrs. Wilson, didn't you mention your cousin was looking for a new start after her husband passed?" "Eliza's a fine cook and keeps a clean house," Mrs. Wilson confirmed. "She might be interested in running such an establishment." Olivia watched as Quinn coordinated the discussion, guiding without dominating, considering each suggestion thoughtfully. He had a natural gift for leadership, not through force, but through respect and inclusion. It was yet another facet of him she had come to admire. The meeting concluded with concrete plans and assignments for each council member. As people filed out of the newly refurbished town hall, formerly the saloon, now repurposed for more respectable gatherings, Quinn approached Olivia. "Would you walk with me?" he asked, his expression uncharacteristically hesitant. "There's something I'd like to discuss." Curious, Olivia agreed. They strolled through the town, which now showed clear signs of renewal. Lamplight glowed from several windows. The smithy's forge scent sparks up into the darkening sky, and the sounds of a fiddle drifted from the Hamilton home where their teenage son practiced each evening. Quinn led her to a plot of land at the edge of town, where the foundations of a house were taking shape. Olivia had noticed the construction but assumed it was for one of the new arrivals. "What do you think?" Quinn asked, gesturing to the outline visible in the fading light. "It looks to be a good size," Olivia observed. "Who will live here? I hope I will." He turned to face her directly. "I've been living in rooms above the mercantile since we began rebuilding, but with winter coming." "It's certainly time you had a proper home," Olivia agreed, still not understanding his unusual nervousness. Quinn took a deep breath. "The thing is, Miss Reynolds, Olivia, I find myself hoping it might be a home for two." The implication of his words made her breath catch. "Mr. Xavier." "Quinn," he corrected softly. "Please, Quinn," she amended, heart racing. "Are you suggesting—" "I'm not doing this well," he said with a self-deprecating smile. "What I'm trying to say is that I've come to care for you deeply. Your intelligence, your dedication to the children, your willingness to see possibility where others might see only ruin." He gestured to the foundation. "I'm building this house with you in mind, the kitchen windows placed to catch the morning light, because I've noticed you enjoy the sunrise, the parlor large enough for gatherings of students, a study where you could prepare lessons or read in peace." Olivia felt tears gather in her eyes at the thoughtfulness of his planning. "You've considered all this, every detail," he confirmed, his voice rough with emotion. "Because I can no longer imagine building this town or my life without you in it." He reached for her hands, enfolding them in his. "I know it's soon, perhaps too soon, and I'm not asking for an immediate answer, but I want you to know my intentions. I love you, Olivia Reynolds. I want to build not just a town around you, but a life with you." Olivia found herself speechless, overwhelmed by the sincerity in his storm-gray eyes and the depth of feeling in his words. In the months since her arrival, she had come to admire him, respect him, and yes, care for him. But love. Was that what made her pulse quicken when he entered a room? What caused her to seek his opinion on matters both practical and personal? What had her watching for his approach each day? "I don't know what to say," she admitted finally. "You don't need to say anything now," he assured her, though she could see hope warring with anxiety in his expression. "Just think on it. The house won't be finished until spring." She nodded, still too moved for coherent speech. Quinn seemed to understand, for he simply offered his arm to escort her back to the parsonage, maintaining a respectful silence that allowed her to process his declaration. That night, Olivia lay awake long after Martha's breathing had settled into the rhythm of sleep. Quinn loved her. Wanted to build a life with her. The realization should have terrified her, she who had valued her independence, who had journeyed west alone rather than accept the limited options available to her in Chicago. Yet instead of fear, she felt a strange sense of rightness, as if pieces of a puzzle were finally falling into place. She had come to Fort Bridger seeking employment but had found purpose. And perhaps, unexpectedly, love as well. The next few weeks brought a flurry of activity to the town. The first snow fell in early October, a light dusting that melted by midday but served as a reminder of the harsher weather to come. Preparations for winter occupied everyone storing food, cutting firewood, insulating homes against the coming cold. Quinn worked tirelessly, dividing his time between his own house construction and helping others weatherproof their dwellings. Despite his declaration, he maintained a respectful distance, never pressing Olivia for an answer but continuing to seek her company when circumstances allowed. For her part, Olivia found herself watching him with new awareness, the strength in his shoulders as he lifted lumber, the gentleness in his hands when he helped Emma Wilson with a stubborn button on her coat, the wisdom in his guidance of the town's growth. As October gave way to November, the harvest festival Quinn and Olivia had planned came to fruition. Tables were set up in the town square, laden with the bounty of garden plots and hunting expeditions. Lanterns hung from wires strung between buildings, casting a golden glow over the gathering. The entire population of Fort Bridger, now nearly 40 souls, came together to celebrate their collective achievement. The mood was festive, with the Wilsons' eldest grandson providing fiddle music for dancing, children playing games organized by Olivia, and everyone contributing to the communal meal. As twilight deepened, Quinn found Olivia standing slightly apart, watching the celebrations with a contented smile. "A successful evening," he observed, offering her a cup of hot cider. "Indeed," she agreed, accepting the drink gratefully as the night air carried a distinct chill. They needed this a chance to come together as more than just neighbors. "As a community," Quinn said, following her gaze to where Martha laughed at something the young doctor said, her cheeks flushed in a way that suggested more than just the cool air. "A real town again. You've done it," Olivia said softly. "What you promised that first day, you've built a town." Quinn's eyes, when they met hers, were serious despite the festivities around them. "We've built it," he corrected. "Together." The music shifted to a slower tune, and couples moved into each other's arms for a waltz. Quinn hesitated only briefly before extending his hand. "Would you dance with me, Miss Reynolds?" Olivia placed her hand in his without reservation. "I would be honored, Mr. Xavier." He led her to the makeshift dance floor, one hand settling respectfully at her waist while the other clasped hers. They moved together with surprising harmony, as if they had danced 100 times before. "I've been thinking about what you said," Olivia ventured as they circled the square. "About the house, about us." Quinn's step faltered briefly before he regained the rhythm. "Have you?" "Yes." She met his gaze steadily. "I came west seeking independence, a chance to make my own way without relying on others' charity or judgment." "I understand," he said, though she could see disappointment beginning to shadow his eyes. "What I've found here is something I never expected," she continued before he could withdraw further. "Not just employment or purpose, but partnership. You didn't ask me to conform to your vision, you included me in shaping it. You valued my thoughts, my contributions." Hope cautiously rekindled in his expression. "Because they matter, you matter. I've never known anyone like you, Quinn Xavier." Olivia's voice softened. "Someone who sees possibility where others see emptiness, who builds rather than abandons, who loves with such quiet certainty." The dance had carried them to the edge of the square, partially shadowed from the other's view. Quinn stopped moving, though he didn't release her. "Olivia," he said, her name a question and a prayer all at once. "Yes," she answered simply. "Yes to the house. Yes to building a life together. Yes to loving you." For a moment, he stood perfectly still, as if afraid any movement might shatter the moment. Then, with reverence that made her heart ache, he brought his hand to her cheek. "May I kiss you?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. In answer, Olivia rose on her toes, bringing her lips to his in a kiss that was both tender and promising. His arms encircled her, drawing her closer as the music and laughter from the festival faded into the background of her awareness. When they finally parted, Quinn rested his forehead against hers. "I will spend every day making sure you never regret this decision." "I know," she said, and realized it was true. This man, who had promised to build a town around her, would keep his word in this as in all things. They returned to the celebration hand in hand, their changed relationship immediately apparent to Martha, who embraced Olivia with tears in her eyes. "I had hoped," she confessed, "but I didn't want to pressure either of you." "Your brother is quite capable of exerting his own gentle pressure," Olivia said with a smile, squeezing Quinn's hand. The news spread quickly through the small gathering, bringing congratulations and well wishes from their neighbors. Mrs. Wilson declared she'd always known it would happen, while her husband gruffly offered Quinn advice about marriage that made the younger man's ears redden visibly, even in the lantern light. As winter settled over Fort Bridger, bringing snow that blanketed the town in pristine white, work on Quinn's house now their house continued whenever weather permitted. The exterior was completed before the worst of the storms, allowing interior work to progress regardless of conditions outside. Olivia found herself drawn into the planning, suggesting modifications that Quinn incorporated eagerly. The study became larger, with built-in shelves for books. The kitchen gained a corner nook perfect for informal meals. A second bedroom was added for the future, Quinn said with a meaningful glance that made Olivia blush. They set a wedding date for the first day of spring, when travel would be easier for those coming from outside town. Quinn rode to Green River through a blizzard to post announcements to the few relatives Olivia had back east, though she held little hope any would make the journey. Christmas came, bringing with it a festive spirit that transcended the town's still limited resources. The schoolhouse was decorated with paper chains made by the children and pine boughs gathered from the surrounding hills. Gifts were simple, but meaningful hand-carved toys for the youngest, knitted scarves and mittens, preserves from summer harvests. Quinn presented Olivia with a small wooden box, exquisitely crafted with a pattern of wildflowers inlaid in different woods. "It's beautiful," she breathed, running her fingers over the smooth surface. "Open it," he urged, an unusual nervousness in his manner. Inside, nestled on a bed of soft fabric, lay a ring. Not ornate or expensive, but lovely in its simplicity, a band of silver with a small pearl set flush within it. "It was my mother's," Quinn explained. "My father gave it to her when they decided to settle here permanently." He said the pearl represented the treasure they'd found not in gold or silver, but in building a life together. Tears blurred Olivia's vision as she looked from the ring to the man before her. "It's perfect," she whispered. Quinn took the ring and slid it onto her finger where it fit as if made for her. "Like you," he said softly, "perfect for this place, perfect for me." As winter gradually loosened its grip on the land, Fort Bridger continued to grow. The railroad construction began, bringing workers who spent their wages at the general store and took their meals at the boarding house, now operated by Mrs. Wilson's cousin. A proper church was established in what had once been the town hall, with services led by a circuit preacher until a permanent minister could be found. The school, under Olivia's guidance, flourished. Enrollment reached 18 by February, necessitating the addition of a second room to the schoolhouse. Quinn personally oversaw the construction, ensuring it matched the original structure seamlessly. On the first day of spring, as promised, Olivia Reynolds became Olivia Xavier in a ceremony attended by the entire town. She wore a dress of pale blue silk ordered specially from Denver, with Martha's lace veil completing the ensemble. Quinn, cleanly shaven for the occasion and dressed in a new suit, looked at her as if she were the sunrise after the longest night. Their vows, spoken in the newly consecrated church, reflected the journey that had brought them together, promises not just of love and fidelity, but of partnership, of building something lasting together, of seeing possibility where others might see only emptiness. "I will build my life around you," Quinn promised, his voice steady despite the emotion evident in his eyes. "Every day, every year, for as long as we both shall live." "And I will stand beside you," Olivia responded, her heart full to bursting. Building, growing, believing in our shared vision for all our days. The celebration afterward lasted well into the evening, with food and music and dancing under stars that seemed to shine with particular brilliance over Fort Bridger. As night deepened, Quinn and Olivia slipped away to their newly completed home, where a fire welcomed them in the hearth and fresh linens graced the marriage bed. Later, as they lay together in the quiet darkness, Olivia traced patterns on Quinn's chest, marveling at how completely her life had transformed in less than a year. "What are you thinking?" he asked, his fingers gently combing through her unbound hair. "About that first day," she admitted. "How devastated I felt seeing this place, how certain I was that you were either a fool or a liar when you said you'd build a town around me." He chuckled, the sound rumbling pleasantly under her ear. "I can't blame you, it must have seemed impossible." "And now look at us," she said, lifting her head to meet his gaze in the dim light. "A thriving town, a school full of children, a home of our own. And each other," he added, drawing her closer. The most important part," she agreed, settling into his embrace. Spring turned to summer, and Fort Bridger continued to flourish. The railroad was completed in June, bringing the first train through with ceremonial fanfare that included a ribbon cutting and speeches from Quinn as town founder and Mayor Frank Hamilton. Regular service began the following week, connecting the once isolated community to the wider world with twice-weekly trains in each direction. Olivia's school closed for the summer months, giving her time to prepare for the influx of new students expected when several families moved to town in August. She also found herself making another, more personal preparation as morning sickness confirmed what she had begun to suspect their family would grow by one come winter. Quinn's joy at the news was boundless. He immediately began planning an addition to their home and crafting a cradle from the same pine that had built their roof beams. For continuity, he explained when Olivia questioned the choice of wood. So our child will always be connected to the foundation of our life together. The sentiment touched her deeply, reinforcing her certainty that this man, this place, this life was exactly where she belonged. By autumn, Fort Bridger's population had more than doubled from the previous year. The school now boasted 32 students, and a second teacher, a young woman from Denver, who had answered Olivia's advertisement much as Olivia herself had once answered Quinn's. As her pregnancy progressed, Olivia reduced her teaching duties, but remained actively involved in town planning. When the territorial governor visited in October to officially recognize Fort Bridger's incorporation, it was Olivia who gave him the tour of the school and outlined their educational philosophy. Mrs. Xavier, the governor remarked as they concluded the tour, your husband has built quite a remarkable community here. Many towns with better starting advantages have failed where Fort Bridger has succeeded. He had a vision, Olivia acknowledged. But it took all of us believing in it to make it real. I suspect his greatest asset was convincing you to stay, the governor observed shrewdly. A man needs a partner who shares his dreams, especially in these frontier territories. The comment stayed with Olivia long after the governor's departure. That evening, as she and Quinn sat on their porch watching the sunset paint the now bustling town in gold and amber, she repeated the conversation. He's right, you know, Quinn said, his hand resting gently on her rounded belly where their child grew. I had the vision, but you gave it heart. You made this a community, not just a collection of buildings. We did it together, Olivia corrected, covering his hand with hers. Just as we'll raise this child together. Their son, William Thomas Xavier, arrived during the first snowfall of December, entering the world with a robust cry that seemed to announce his intention to make himself heard. He had his father's storm-gray eyes and a tuft of hair that promised to darken to his mother's auburn. Quinn, who had paced anxiously outside their bedroom during the delivery attended by Martha and the town's doctor, wept unabashedly when he first held his son. Perfect, he whispered, reverently touching the tiny fingers that curled reflexively around his much larger one. Absolutely perfect. As William grew, so did Fort Bridger. By his first birthday, the town boasted over 300 residents, a proper clinic, 2 churches, a newspaper office, and a town hall that doubled as a community gathering space. The school had expanded again, now occupying a 2-story building with separate classrooms for different age groups. Olivia, who had returned to teaching part-time once William was weaned, found herself increasingly involved in planning for the town's future. When Quinn suggested she run for the school board, she surprised herself by agreeing readily. You've become quite the frontier woman, Martha teased when Olivia won the election handily. A far cry from that hesitant city teacher who arrived in a ghost town. I had a good example of how to see potential where others might not, Olivia replied, glancing toward where Quinn was showing 3-year-old William how to plant carrot seeds in their garden. Time continued its steady march forward. William was joined by a sister, Elizabeth Martha, when he was 4, and another brother, James Quinn, 2 years after that. Each child brought new joy to their home, which had expanded along with their family. 10 years after Olivia's arrival in what had once been a ghost town, Fort Bridger celebrated its official designation as a county seat. The festivities included a parade down the now thriving Main Street, speeches from town officials, and a historical exhibit organized by the school to commemorate the town's revival. At the center of the exhibit stood a photograph taken shortly after Olivia's arrival showing the schoolhouse, still under repair, with Quinn and Olivia standing before it. Beside it hung a current photograph of the town, bustling with activity, buildings in good repair, streets lined with trees that Quinn had planted as saplings that first year. "Quite a difference," remarked an elderly Mrs. Wilson, who had become something of a town matriarch. All because two stubborn people believed it could be. That evening, after the celebrations had concluded and their children were tucked into bed, Quinn and Olivia returned to the hill where he had once shown her the sunset reflecting off the windows of empty buildings. Now those same windows glowed with lamplight from within, signifying homes and businesses filled with life. "Did you ever imagine it would become this?" Olivia asked, leaning against her husband's solid strength as they surveyed what they had helped create. Quinn's arm tightened around her waist. "I hoped," he admitted, "but hope is a fragile thing until it's shared." He turned to face her fully. "You made my hope real, Olivia. You gave it substance and heart. We did it together," she insisted, as she had so many times over the years. "Together," he agreed, drawing her into a kiss that still held the power to make her heart race after all their years together. As they walked back down the hill toward their real home, built of more than just wood and stone, but of shared dreams and mutual respect, Olivia reflected on the strange twist of fate that had brought her to this once abandoned town. How close she had come to leaving, to dismissing Quinn's vision as impossible fantasy. Instead, she had taken a chance on a man who promised to build a town around her. And he had kept that promise, creating not just buildings and streets but a community, a family, a life richer than anything she could have imagined that dusty afternoon when she first arrived. Fort Bridger would continue to grow and change in the years to come, as all living things must. But its heart, the partnership of two people who saw possibility where others saw only emptiness, would remain its foundation, its most essential truth. And for Olivia and Quinn Xavier, that was more than enough. It was everything.